Halo and 343 Industries. These two things go together about as well as toothpaste and orange juice or the church and the state. Yet for reasons unknown, we've been subjected to the product of this absolutely heinous amalgamation of game design for over a full decade. Evidently, the suits that are behind the Halo franchise have absolutely no idea what to do to salvage what's left of it. Otherwise, 343 would have been gone a long time ago. But I have good news to share with these clueless executives. I am here today to tell them how to do their job for free. That's right, I'm saying I know how to handle a multi-billion-dollar franchise better than this guy.
Gaming.
And I think all of you probably do too. So let's go ahead and talk about Halo Infinite and everything that I think is wrong with it. And just to be clear before we get started, I'm just talking about the free-to-play portion of Infinite today, so I won't be covering the campaign at all. So let's start by talking about the gameplay. I know many of you watching probably think the core gameplay of Infinite is good. I see a lot of gamers who think 343 did a great job making a modern adaptation of Halo with Infinite, and that the real reason the game failed is because of a lack of content. Now, I definitely agree that the terrible content output is the reason why Infinite is a dead game, but where we might disagree is that I think the gameplay sucks too. And for me, it all starts with the quality of the maps. So to their credit, 343 did recently add 3 new Forge maps with the winter update, one of which is a recreation of the pit from Halo 3, and these are actually pretty decent. And thank God for that, because pretty much all of the other maps this game launched with are absolute trash. For starters, they're all too big. This causes a bunch of issues that I'll get to soon, but the main problem that persists across all the maps is the gameplay is just too damn slow. Every match of Infinite feels like each team is short a player or 2, or even 3 in the case of some of the larger maps. You could definitely bump the player count of Infinite matches to 5v5 or even 6v6 in some cases, without the maps feeling overpopulated. Of course, Halo gameplay was never supposed to be as high octane as like Call of Duty, but it really shouldn't feel like I'm walking around in a graveyard either. So let's go over my ranking of Halo Infinite's launch maps to get a better idea of what's going on here. We'll start off with Streets, Aquarius, and Livefire. These maps have an alright flow to them, sightlines are manageable, and they service every game mode fine. I think these maps are acceptable in quality and are the best 343 have to offer here, but they're definitely not exceptional in any way. Moving down the list, Bazaar and Recharge are considerably worse than the 3 aforementioned levels. I know a lot of people might disagree with me here, especially on Recharge, but I think these maps would be considered bottom tier in virtually any other multiplayer shooter, yet here they sit in the middle of the pack, which says a lot about the quality on display here. I think the primary issue with these two maps is how they just leave the center of the map completely open, with very little cover to speak of. There isn't an effective way to smoothly rotate around the maps either, and this leads to players camping on the outskirts of the map looking in, and I just think this strongly goes against the grain of the way Halo gameplay is supposed to feel. Entering the middle of the map here is almost a guaranteed death. You'll be shot at from 3 different directions basically instantly, and I found myself getting double or triple teamed all the time on these maps, and I usually would have no idea where the shots were even coming from. Now, I'm definitely not an MLG Halo player, and some might even call me dog shit, but this isn't an issue I have with any other multiplayer game. Moving closer to the bottom of the barrel, the next map on our list is Behemoth. This map suffers considerably from the issue I was just talking about with the size of the maps, but this is far from the only issue here. For one thing, this map has a Warthog spawn, so if your team has control of the Warthog, you can have 3/4 of your team just riding around in circles on the map. A Banshee, Ghost, or Chopper can also spawn, which means half of all players can be in a vehicle at one time. Remember, this isn't a big team battle map either. We're talking 4v4 here. And this map is just absolutely massive. So the other 4 players are just relegated to taking pot shots at one another from long distance and trying to dodge shots from whoever was lucky enough to snag the sniper or whoever was unlucky enough to get the skewer instead. I'm sure you can imagine how poor the gameplay is here in regular Slayer, but the issue with this design gets so much worse in objective modes. So bad, in fact, that it was pulled from ranked rotation for team objective. This map is truly awful, but it is somehow not the worst this game has to offer. That honor goes to Launch Site. This map is a disease, and it is a perfect example of everything a level designer could possibly dream of doing wrong. There is no shot 343 playtested this map before releasing it. No shot. For one thing, it's way too fucking big, man. Like I said before, all of the maps in this game feel too large, but this one is just absolutely absurd. Of course, this means this map also suffers from the sightline issue I was talking about on those other maps. But imagine those issues have a ravenous addiction to crack cocaine. Matches on this map routinely end before the timer hits 12 minutes, with neither team actually achieving the win condition for the game mode. And this by itself would be a huge cause for concern, but a much worse issue with this level is that it was clearly designed for one flag capture the flag. And 343 apparently was short on content and fucks to give, so they just threw it into the regular map rotation. As a result, one side starts with a warthog, a ghost, and a mongoose, and they start with a damn launch pad that sends them to the other side. Meanwhile, that other side starts with one mongoose. On top of that, the side that already has the clear advantage also starts with the far superior power weapon spawn. You get rockets or a cinder shot on that side, while the other side starts with a sniper, or even worse, the skewer. The lack of thought put into the maps in this game is unnerving. How can a company that was essentially gift-wrapped the most important video game franchise ever treat such an important aspect of the gameplay with this level of indifference? And this nonchalance continues throughout almost all of the design aspects of Halo Infinite. The weapons in Halo are as important to the franchise's identity as grunts and elites, the Warthog and the Ghost, or even Master Chief himself. And from Halo 1 to Halo Reach, every weapon in every game is basically immediately identifiable. You can tell just by seeing it for even a split second what it would be effective against and how you should use it. And when the decision was made by Bungie to remove a weapon from a future Halo game, it usually felt carefully considered, and usually the weapon removed was either redundant, generally disliked, or replaced by something even better and more satisfying to use. Take the Spiker and Mauler not being included or replaced in Halo Reach, while the concussion rifle took the place of the brute shot from Halo 3 as examples of this. But 343 have thrown this concept right out the window. Let's take a look at some of the weapons they've added to Infinite. So for starters, as far as I can tell, the shock rifle is basically just a worse version of the sniper rifle. The heat wave is completely useless. Is it a shotgun? Is it some kind of weird-ass grenade launcher? I can't tell, but what I do know is I've managed to kill myself multiple times while using it because the bullets just bounce off of everything. And what the fuck is the Disruptor? Why did they feel the need to add another useless pistol to this game? Speaking of useless pistols, what's the deal with the Mangler? This gun is supposed to be like the Mauler, but it's even worse. Like so many of the weapons in this game, I just don't understand the use case for it. Who did 343 here asking for weapons like this to be added to Halo? I seriously have no idea. This trend of adding offbeat weapons started in Halo 4 with the inclusion of Forerunner weapons, but I actually didn't mind a lot of those guns. They were mostly effective, and many of them closely mirrored weapons from previous Halo games, like the SMG, for example. These weapons were also included in Halo 5, but I think Halo 5 really took a lot of good steps to make sure that classic Halo weapons were still well represented. So I think Halo Infinite is by far the farthest removed from the classic Halo weapon feel of any 343 release yet. It just feels like 343 wants to add new weapons just for the sake of it. But adding a new weapon to Halo needs to be a long, well thought out process with strong considerations made to how each new weapon will affect the balance of the gameplay. The impact adding a new weapon can have on Halo's gameplay is tantamount to adding a new hero to a MOBA. So you can't just randomly throw in a handful of new guns and equipment that seemingly have no place or valid use case into a series like Halo. For proof of this, let's remember the community's reaction to Halo Reach in 2010. We might look back on that game as a timeless classic now, but at the time it was released, Reach was actually a very controversial game. Why? It was too different from Halo 3. Bungie added armor abilities, which was obviously a terrible decision. They added the DMR in place of the battle rifle, added the needle rifle in place of the carbine, and added Bloom. At the time, the community overwhelmingly hated these changes, myself included. Nowadays, I might look back on armor lock, jetpacks, and the DMR with fond memories in mind, but I still think the lesson should have remained the same for 343. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Yet, instead of learning from the mistakes Bungie made with Reach, 343 doubled down on them by adding aim down sights, create a class, and kill streaks to future titles. Now, Halo Infinite did make an attempt to reel back some of the gameplay decisions the community disliked about Halo 4 and 5, and I do feel like they were somewhat successful in doing this. But the problem is that although 343 managed to bring Halo back to a more recognizable state gameplay-wise, they have utterly failed to bring back the soul of Halo, and have shown their studio to be rife with incompetency to the highest degree. In over 12 years, which is 3 years longer than Bungie made Halo games, just in case you were wondering, they have been completely incapable of innovating to create a modern gameplay identity for this franchise. The resulting whiplash effect is a guaranteed way to shoo off longtime fans and new players alike. Between absolutely butchering the shotgun and somehow making the battle rifle feel worse than every other Halo game, including the nearly 20-year-old Halo 2, it is clear to me that 343 has completely lost the plot here. Like I mentioned, virtually all of the power weapons in Infinite feel either god-awful or entirely unnecessary. And after all of the time that I have been playing this game, I still have no idea what half of these weapons are even supposed to do or what the point in them actually is. And to make matters even worse, they decided to completely change how power weapon spawning works. This is absolutely dumbfounding. In every other Halo game, power weapons have set spawn points and you know what weapon will spawn at that spot on the map every game you play. But this is not the case with Infinite. Basically, Infinite uses a system where each weapon spawn pad spawns a specific type of weapon. So a wall rack might spawn a tactical rifle. So that means the battle rifle or the commando. Or a spawn pad will produce either a rocket launcher or a cinder shot, both explosive weapons. This is on a game-by-game basis, so one game will pick to spawn the rocket launcher on the pad, and the next game will spawn the cinder shot. The problem with this is twofold. For one thing, oftentimes the weapon options set for a specific spawn are not equivalent to one another. As an example, this game, for some reason, considers the skewer and sniper rifle to be equivalent. We all know what the sniper rifle in Halo does, and the skewer is just not at all the same thing. It's not even close. Basically, the skewer is a one-shot kill weapon that has 4 shots available. It is scoped, but its functionality is so much different than the sniper, and most players aren't a huge fan of this weapon as it is rather difficult to use effectively. Secondly, and more importantly, this system means you need to learn what weapon is spawning where every game you play. You probably won't want to bum rush the sword spawn because you might find a gravity hammer there instead, and because you can't count on a specific power weapon spawning in the same place every game, and because many of this game's power weapons feel arbitrary and useless, players are less likely to fight for control over the parts of the map where they usually spawn. This totally contradicts the way that Halo matches are supposed to flow, and I believe that this is a huge contributing factor to what has made Infinite's multiplayer feel so bad for many players. The final piece to the Halo gameplay puzzle is how it feels to move your Spartan around. And while I think Infinite's rendition is serviceable, I think it still feels the worst of any Halo game to date. I recognize that many Halo fans actually quite like this particular aspect of Infinite, but I think 343 tried a little too hard to make this game feel like old school Halo, and the resulting movement mechanics feel very slow-paced. The thing is, when you're trying to adapt the mechanics of an old classic game to the modern age, the feeling you need to mimic is not how the classic games actually feel today, but instead the goal should be to capture how the classics felt when they were new. 343 needed to try to realize the feeling of fresh, modern game mechanics with a little Halo twist thrown in to achieve that goal. Instead, they went for the complete opposite approach and held on too tightly to the way older Halo games feel. In 2007, Halo 3 had this pace and fluidity to it that no other game could match. Halo Infinite seems to be trying to replicate that same feeling, when in actuality it needs to be molding its own identity by offering comparably revolutionary gameplay. And I think this speaks to a larger issue with Infinite and the way 343 has handled their approach to the Halo franchise in general. It seems like 343 is just trying to sell nostalgia for an intellectual property to us. For some reason, they seem to think that people will actually play Halo just because it's called Halo and feels like Halo used to feel. And I got no clue what gave them this idea. They killed any hype for this franchise by absolutely butchering every single fucking release they've been responsible for. Seriously, Halo 4 was a massive disappointment for most players, but at least it worked. The Master Chief Collection was essentially unplayable for nearly 2 years after its launch. Just think about that for a second. 343 couldn't even manage to combine 4 games that already existed without it resulting in a colossal meltdown. And they developed 3 of those 4 games themselves. How fucked is that? Halo 5 released missing a ton of content. No split screen campaign, no Forge, no Oddball, Big Team Battle, Infection, King of the Hill, the list goes on. And don't even get me started on Rex. The point is, 343 has never had a successful Halo release. The result of this? Nobody gives a shit about Halo anymore. The last good Halo game was released over 12 years ago. This means that someone who is 18 today was 6 years old when Reach was released and 3 years old when Halo 3 was released. Most of them have probably never even played the games 343 is trying to recall nostalgia for anyway. The executives behind this game have no idea what made Halo feel so special in the first place, and 343 Industries categorically does not understand the identity of the franchise they were tasked with continuing. So, it's time for them to blaze a new trail. How can they accomplish this? Easy. Add Battle Royale. And I can hear the outrage already, so before you come at me with your dislikes and your comments and your fucking pitchforks, just listen to me, okay? Hear me out. Fuck. In 2007, Halo 3 was released alongside COD 4. At the time, Call of Duty and Halo were seen as equivalents, direct competitors to one another, and both completely dominated multiplayer gaming. This trend continued until the early 2010s, when both franchises started to see major drops in sales figures, and it started to seem like they were both basically on their way to complete irrelevance. But in 2019, something changed for Call of Duty. The Modern Warfare reboot was released, and with it, Warzone. Activision saw the need for Call of Duty to identify with a new audience, a younger audience, and the answer was obvious. With games like PUBG and Fortnite dominating platforms like YouTube and Twitch, Battle Royale was the clear-cut solution for their dying franchise. Ever since Warzone was released, Call of Duty has risen back to being one of the most popular gaming franchises in the world. In 2023, Warzone continues to compete at the very top level, battling with games like Apex Legends and Fortnite for people's attention, and more importantly, their money. Meanwhile, where is Halo? About as low as it can go. As I'm recording this, Halo Infinite is sitting below games like DayZ, StarCraft 2, and Pokemon trading card game on Twitch. It has the same amount of viewers as NCAA Football 14.
Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to my top 5 moments.
What an embarrassment. So yeah, adding Battle Royale is a very clear answer to Halo Infinite's critical problem. I have so little faith in 343's ability to implement this correctly, but if they were able to get this right, it could save Halo. It might be their only chance to revive this iconic franchise. It isn't the only thing that needs to change, as I've already made clear, but the fact of the matter is you need to give people what they actually want to play if you want to get this thing off the ground. Maybe there was a chance for a competent game developer to recreate Halo and revive the arena shooter-inspired gameplay it was once known for, but that ship sailed and fucking sunk a long time ago. We already know people don't want to play Infinite in its current state, so it's time for 343 to take the dive and follow this industry trend. You don't need to play it if you don't want to, and I probably wouldn't. But I also don't play Infinite now, and you probably don't either. So something's got to give, and whether you like it or not, Battle Royale is that something. If it isn't clear already, let me just go ahead and state this plainly. Halo Infinite being launched as a free-to-play live service game is not the reason it has been such a colossal disaster. I get that it's an easy issue to point your finger at, but if you think including microtransactions and battle passes is the reason for this game's failure, you are 100% wrong, and I'll take the next little bit to explain why. Here's a list of the top 10 most played games on Steam as I'm putting this video together. You'll notice that 7 of these 10 games are free-to-play live service products. You'll also notice that only one of these games, Elden Ring, does not rely on abusing its player base by shoving a predatory monetization system down its throat. Halo Infinite should have been immensely successful, and not despite the microtransactions, but because of them. Look, I'm sorry to say it, folks, but live service games are here to stay. In-game purchases have completed their infestation of our hobby. This all started in 2006 with Oblivion's infamous Horse Armor add-on, and in today's world, the $2 price tag attached to that content somehow seems generous. But at the time of its release, it was loathed by the community. But it didn't matter. The floodgates were opened. And now, in 2023, the enemy has long since won. And I say if you can't beat them, join them. So let us enter an alternate universe where you and I and all the other gamers out there actually love buying microtransactions. We can't get enough of it over here, and even in this universe, we're not buying shit on Halo Infinite. Alright, let's start by taking a look at the Battle Pass system. In over 1 year since it was released, Infinite has only offered 2 fully fledged Battle Passes. Meanwhile, virtually every other live service game offers a new Battle Pass at least once every 2 to 4 months. Rocket League starts a new season 3 or 4 times a year, Fortnite offers a new season at least 4 times a year, and Valorant had 7 different Battle Passes available in 2022. This means that every other live service game is generating 2 to over 4 times the content that Infinite is solely through their Battle Passes. And this is before we even look at the content actually included in the passes. Let's take a look at Season 1 of the Infinite Pass, titled Heroes of Reach. So basically, the first content available in what should have been the apex of the Halo franchise was quite literally just content ripped from a game from over 10 fucking years ago. What on earth was 343 Industries working on for 6 years? Just to put this into even more context, Bungie developed Halo Reach in 3 years, while also developing Halo 3 ODST. And they released a game with not only virtually all the same cosmetics plus some, but also a fully fledged product with all the content you should expect from a Halo game. 343 then released their Season 2 Battle Pass, and although this content was actually original, it still sucks huge Major Nelson butt cheeks. Plus, this game uses one of the most unbelievably idiotic XP systems of all time. For a long while after this game was released, you couldn't even progress in the Battle Pass if you had already completed your daily challenges. Since then, they have added a match XP system, which hilariously is apparently in beta. Like, how do you even have numbers in beta? They're numbers. Like, the problem is, it still fucking sucks, man. It is unbelievable that this company is too half-witted to figure out a decent XP system. It's literally numbers. Basic numeration. The point is, paying to unlock a trickle of knee pads, gloves, helmet attachments, and the like, especially with this garbage progression system, is the product of an actual fucking clown show. Let's compare this to the live service game that I believe does cosmetic microtransactions the best, and that's Fortnite. From a numbers perspective, Infinite actually has substantially more actual cosmetic unlockables available in its Battle Pass with 111, while Fortnite only has 53. This, however, is an illusion. For starters, like I mentioned earlier, Halo gives you such minor cosmetic changes with the items you unlock, like unlocking knee pads and gloves, which virtually all look exactly the same. It basically means nothing. Needing to pay to unlock armor colors? I mean, bruh, it's insane. Changing armor colors has been included for free in Halo games for the better part of 2 decades, and yet 343 wants to charge for that in Infinite? It's absolutely ridiculous. And separating right and left shoulder pads into different tiers? I mean, give me a fucking break, man. If we break down the content in the Infinite Battle Pass, it's so easy to see the massive gulf in quality and quantity between the content on offer in these 2 games. After a game of Infinite, You'll unlock something like a sun visor or a right shoulder pad, or you'll get some other absolute garbage you'll never even see while you're playing. Not that you'd want to see it, because most of this stuff looks like total shit anyway.
Oh, yeah!
But on the contrary, when you finish a game of Fortnite and level up the battle pass there, you could unlock a fully fledged skin that changes how your character looks head to toe, or a harvesting tool that can take basically an infinite number of different forms, or one of a million different types of weapon skins, many of which are animated. I mean, there's just so many things you can unlock in this game. There have been so many truly excellent cosmetics put on offer in Fortnite, it's just impossible to count them all. Meanwhile, Halo is offering us a flaming helmet as one of the very last unlockables in the Battle Pass, which is an item that was put on offer in Halo 15 fucking years ago. Or we have the chance to give our Spartan bad breath. How cool! And this is all before we even talk about the shop in this game. Virtually all the items offered in the item shop suck as much ass as the stuff they offer in the Battle Pass.
Bruh. What is this?
And the shop only updates once a week. Once a week! If you don't understand how insane this is for a live service game, to put it in perspective, virtually every other game has new items on offer every single day. And some games even have items available for less than a day. This keeps our attention for so much longer and obviously makes these games way more money too. If you've been lucky enough to be one of the ones who has never played this game, you might be thinking something like, so they don't refresh the item shop that often, but surely there are plenty of items to choose from, right?
Wrong.
To compare this to Fortnite, the Fortnite shop usually has around 25 or 30 items on offer at any given time. And that includes a bunch of bundles, by the way. Halo Infinite literally only has 4 fucking items. And again, many of the items in the Fortnite shop update daily, while Halo is once a week. And you'll notice a similar trend to Fortnite if you look at any other live service game out right now that isn't Halo Infinite. This lack of content absolutely baffles me. It makes no sense from a player's perspective, and it definitely doesn't make sense from a business perspective. Maybe this is Xbox and 343 trying to prevent backlash from longtime fans over excessive microtransactions, but if this was the case, they should really just be ditching this system entirely in favor of something that is more true to the free progression systems we used to have. Trying to find a middle ground between monetizing this game effectively and not pissing off longtime Halo fans is not working out as they might have hoped. But like I mentioned before, the target audience for this game should not be the people who grew up playing Halo 15 or 20 years ago anyway. Most of them have moved on from gaming, and those of us that are still hanging around have learned to tolerate aggressive monetization strategies, especially in free-to-play games like this one. The fact of the matter is that many players want to spend money on these games. Maybe they'd rather if this stuff was free, like it was before, but it isn't. And as a result, they will open their wallets to get it, as so many games have proven in the past. Xbox and 343 should be taking advantage of this and creating far more compelling content to draw in more players and more money. And this would help them make some much needed improvements to this game overall. But they aren't, and as a result, Halo has fallen so far behind the rest of the competition. It seems like they legitimately do not give a shit about making money off of this game, which absolutely perplexes me. What is their plan here? Let's spend some time talking about the absolutely fucking god-awful concept of armor cores. I swear to God, 343 was just trying to make monetizing this game as difficult as possible. For the uninitiated, virtually every cosmetic in Halo Infinite is bound to a specific armor core. What this means is that if you see a nice fucking armor coating in the shop and you have recently suffered from major brain damage and you think to yourself, yeah, I could definitely fuck with spending $20 to make myself look like Iron Man.
These nuts.
You first need to check that the item itself is even being sold for the armor core that you want to use. You heard me right, folks. The armor colors offered in the shop can't even be used on every piece of armor. This concept would be an insult to the intelligence of every Halo player, even if you could use armor coatings on any piece of armor that you want to, but the fact that you can't is 343 just taking a hot, steamy deuce on our chest. And this same concept applies to basically every item in Infinite. You would need to be lobotomized to think that this system is anything but one of the most anti-consumer microtransaction systems ever developed. It is mind-boggling. This game needs a complete overhaul of its monetization strategy. I'm talking a full rebuild from the ground up because this shit is not working. I hope that whoever developed this part of Infinite donates their brain to science when they die, because I want to know what the fuck is going on up there. I think Halo would have been far better off just switching to the same customization system that basically every shooter uses. Nobody cares what your character looks like in a first-person shooter, so ditch this modular system for the vastly simpler system of just buying a single skin that changes your entire character and hone in on weapon customization. Crazy idea, right? Instead of making dozens of different types of knee pads and boob armor, how about spending your resources on developing a customization system for the thing that you spend 99% of your time looking at while playing the game? Now, I'm no Albert Einstein, but it seems pretty obvious to me that people would rather spend their money on a cool weapon skin than getting a fucking fanny pack or a new pair of knee pads that they're basically never going to see anyway. I can't get over the fact that knee pads are something you can buy in this game. What is this, fucking Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2? Call of Duty figured this out forever ago, and I think that this, along with the lack of Battle Royale, is a massive reason why the popularity of Call of Duty eclipsed Halo in the 2010s and continues to be vastly more relevant today. Figure it out, 343. The solution to this issue is staring you right in the fucking face. It has been for like 16 years, and you're still too stupid to figure it out. Unreal. So I guess the question that we're left with is, what should the future hold for Halo? Most of this video, I've mainly been speaking to improvements that 343 needs to make to the existing Halo game we already have. And this was mainly based on 343's initial plan. They said, like, Infinite was going to last for 10 years. But, like, basically everything 343 says, I really don't think this will actually happen. I think more than likely a new Halo project will be announced in the next couple of years because I really think it's the only chance they have of generating enough hype to get Halo back on track. If current information is true and Microsoft is for whatever reason unable to remove the dunce cap that they've been wearing for the past decade, and they just decide to keep 343 on as the developer for Halo, a major apology tour is going to be required for them if they want to gain any confidence back from the community. Either way, whenever Halo does make its return, some significant changes to the game plan are clearly going to be in order. So first things first, a plan needs to be created for what Halo's identity needs to be. I think 343 can take a page out of the book of many modern games if they're looking for a way to renew this franchise. For example, Splitgate is one of the very best feeling shooters that I have ever played, and I really think that it plays very similar to the way that a successful Halo game should feel in 2023. People want to play shooters that feel hectic and fast-paced, and Halo needs to find a way to incorporate that sense of breakneck gameplay into its formula if they want to be successful headed into the future. 343 needs to find a way to make Halo feel groundbreaking again, and they can do this by absorbing what makes popular games successful now and improving upon that, instead of stubbornly hanging on to a formula for game design that is many years older than what their target audience needs to be. And I know that many of you may be thinking something along the lines of, you just can't please gamers, keep everything the same, they complain that they're tired of it. Change things, and they complain about how much they liked how things used to be. Developers just can't win. The thing is, game development isn't supposed to be easy. You can't just make a handful of changes that are arbitrary at their best and game-breaking at their worst and expect your fan base to just follow along blindly. When you've been gifted one of the most valuable IPs in all of media, along with a virtually unlimited budget, you must be properly equipped to respond to intense scrutiny. People expect greatness from Halo, and 343 has barely been able to provide mediocrity, much less anything approaching influential or seminal. So if Microsoft wants to save their most prized possession, some serious reevaluation to their development strategy must happen before the name Halo loses its appeal entirely. Yep, we're talking about this again, and no, I was not joking when I said this before. Halo needs Battle Royale to survive. This is a trend that generates too much money and too much attention for 343 and Microsoft to continue to ignore it. No, us older Halo fans might not like it or play it, but I'm sorry guys and gals, we don't matter as much as we once did. Making games is a business, and for a business to survive, it needs to constantly reevaluate its target demographic and find ways of appealing to the trends that they follow. So Halo must capitalize on this opportunity if they want to generate the profits required to support this franchise in the long haul. Like I said before, Call of Duty used this strategy to completely reinvigorate the franchise and inspire a whole new generation to spend money on their games. Even if we don't play Battle Royale, adapting Halo to the genre, provided it is integrated successfully, will massively expand Halo's appeal and grow its player base substantially. And if you ever find yourself thinking, man, I wish Halo was still as popular as it was before, if you often find yourself reminiscing on memories of custom games, LAN parties, and co-op campaign with your friends, and you want to relive that again, please consider the following. A good Battle Royale mode could draw enough players and money to Halo that we might be able to experience those things again. So when a Battle Royale mode is announced for Halo, try to keep an open mind. If they do it right, it will be worth it. Before you get too mad at me, let me make a few points crystal clear. For the most part, I hate microtransactions. They're scummy, predatory, greedy. Use whatever adjective you see fit here, and I'll probably agree with you. We've even seen some games take their microtransactions to such a ridiculous level that they can single-handedly destroy someone financially by taking advantage of their addictive personalities. So yeah, I get it. Microtransactions suck and have by far been a net negative on our hobby. But like I said before, Halo should be heavily taking advantage of this aspect of the gaming industry anyway. Call of Duty does it and easily gets away with it, and it's a full-price game. And similar to the argument I was making earlier in this video, I think many gamers actually enjoy live service products, especially when it means their favorite games are free to play. Gamers want new content shoved down their throats. They want games to be absolutely spilling with new stuff to get. They want developers to give them more than they could ever possibly handle. 343 does not understand this, or they're too inept to accomplish it. I think Critical explained this perfectly when he said this.
They've barely even been drip feeding this thing to keep it on life support. It's not enough. It's fucking flatlining. It's dying of thirst, and 343 can't even piss in its mouth.
The fact of the matter is that if Halo changed absolutely nothing about the gameplay itself, but provided players with the flood of new content, be it cosmetic or otherwise, that they are currently so desperately looking for, this game would be so much more popular than it is right now. So it's time for 343 to start taking advantage of this if they want to grow the player base. So this will be the final point that I make, and it is by far the most significant one to pay attention to. The most important thing about Halo is not the maps or the guns or anything to do with the gameplay. It's not what your Spartan, Assault Rifle, or Warthog looks like either. The most important thing about Halo is the sense of community. The community has always been the soul of Halo. It started with Red vs. Blue in 2003, and it took off from there. Bungie clearly realized the potential behind unlocking the creative side of its dedicated fan base, and Halo 3 included a massive host of community features for them to play with. Theater, Forge, and custom games fundamentally changed the way we looked at not just Halo, but the games industry as a whole. All of my best memories of Halo stem from the result of these tools empowering creative gamers to make Halo whatever they wanted it to be. And I'm sure most of you watching this video can say the same thing. And for the longest time, it seemed as though 343 did not understand this fundamental part of Halo's foundation. The good news is that it finally looks like they're starting to realize how important this is to their success. The Forge mode 343 recently added to Infinite is absolutely incredible. It is by far the most feature-packed editor ever included in a video game. Right now, in what is supposedly an early beta state, players have been able to create maps that look just as good, if not better, than developer-made maps. It's basically impossible to distinguish between the two. We've never seen anything even close to this in a video game before, and they're just getting started with what creators will be able to accomplish with this tool. Assuming 343's plans come to fruition, in the future, we can expect to see players being able to craft entire campaign missions in Forge. Think of what that means for community-driven support moving forward. If 343 truly seizes the potential with the power of this tool, the possibilities are absolutely endless. Imagine a future where 343 continues working on this trend. They could start by making specific mechanics editable, like how vehicles and especially weapons operate. And this would allow the community, who clearly know best, to fine-tune the core mechanics of the game. But I really think that they need to go all in on this concept because the potential is massive. Halo Infinite could literally be like Gary's mod, but brand new. I mean, it's insane to think about what they could do with this. I think that by completely unlocking the game, by releasing an actual SDK so players can create anything that they want, is the future that this game or any future Halo games need to realize. 343 needs to take this toolkit to the highest possible level by giving the community access to the tools they themselves use to create and support this game. Obviously, this is a massive task, but 343 should recognize the strength of community-developed content better than just about any studio. After all, the first thing that they were tasked with after being brought on by Microsoft was to provide post-launch content support for Halo Reach, which somewhat ironically, they were able to do pretty well. Content in Halo Reach was driven by community creators for years after its launch, to the point where most of my favorite maps in that game were made in Forge. Hopefully you recognize the potential here as well as I do. A Halo game with full modding support seems like a pipe dream in this day and age, but 343 has clearly and finally shown that they recognize the need to unlock the Halo community's creativity. So hopefully this means that there is an exciting future in store for community-created Halo content, because at the end of the day, that is what this franchise has always been about. So Halo Infinite has been a massive letdown. 343 has failed to release a convincing product yet again. But I think there is still a glimmer of hope for this franchise to reignite the passion gamers used to have for it. If 343 can find a way to start pumping out fresh, appealing content, the player base will grow. They can retain that player base by ensuring the flow of content remains frequent and consistent, and they can reestablish Halo at the forefront of gaming by continuing to empower their community with an excellent, constantly evolving toolset to create new Halo experiences with, and by finding innovative ways to make Halo feel like a legitimate, contemporary gaming franchise rather than a cheap attempt at appealing to our nostalgia to sell us stuff. Is 343 capable of making these changes and committing to a respectable roadmap for the future? I doubt it, and if you've been paying attention for the past 10 plus years, you should too. But if this company can get some serious top-down restructuring and strongly reevaluates its approach to developing these games, I think there's a chance. But I certainly couldn't blame you for disagreeing with me.